Okay, let's just start with the arms down. So the main difficulty all the time is that we just tend to operate from here. And what that does, it just corrupts the posture. So we always tend to sort of, we tend to this, we tend to the head being heavy, collapsing the upper spine a bit and dropping forwards and the bum going back a little bit. So let's just use a different visualization. So just feel as though your legs are like two branches that have come out of the ground with these two hands on top, the pelvis, yeah? And they have just clasped your sacrum. Yeah. And just feel as though your head is like a really light balloon. So the head is wanting to lift upwards. Okay, so if you had that structure, then this would actually swing forwards a little. Yeah? So there'd be no sense of you wanting to sort of push up. Yeah? You'd just be holding this sacrum and the head would be floating around on top. Yeah. So this is how you would be if you were readying yourself for battle, for example. Yeah. So the lives that we live now are just so artificial. They're so unnatural in that we're sort of, you know, we just privilege this and we sit down too much. And so if you were going into battle, you know, you'd be really charged up. Yeah. Your legs would have to be bent, otherwise you'd take off. You'd be so full of spirit and energy. Yeah. So just feel this, feel the sacrum just being clasped. Yeah. And then just feel the coccyx just dangling from it. It doesn't have to be dangling a long way. It could just be a couple of inches, but there's this sense that it's hanging down behind you, slightly behind you. But you want this feeling. The problem with meditation is that it's, you know, it's sort of, it encourages this circuit, this sort of thinking to yourself circuit. So what we want is to have the sacrum held so that we can erupt like a volcano or be ready to erupt. Yeah? And you can feel that having the hands like this doesn't really help. Yeah? Because this, it's sort of doing this. So you really have to work when the arms are up in riding horse. Yeah. So for me, you know, nowadays, because of these artificial lives that we live, you know, our bodies are just too weak, particularly our legs and our spines. So our legs don't really know how to attach us to the ground properly. They just push us away from it. And the spine doesn't really know how to whip energy up the way it used to. Imagine, you know, you're a workman, you know, you're sort of throwing things around, digging the ground. There'd be this whippy energy coming up through you all the time. And you'd just be immense here. And you'd have these strong legs. So just feel as though you're, like your upper back is just wanting to lean back a little bit so that this can lift up. So it's what John called thymus, yeah? So the thymus should feel like it's lifting. Yeah, so this has to be slightly forwards of where you'd like it. Yeah. So we come, in order to come into the head, we have to stick our bum out. Yeah. So that's why bringing the bum in is just so important in Tai Chi. Because if your bum is in, then there's a chance that this will quieten down. Because this loop opens up. Instead of going like this, it sort of frays and it's not so contained. It's not so sort of self-contained. Yeah, so let's just try. So just holding it, but instead of having sort of a contained riding horse, think more of a sort of one that's sort of expressing upwards more. So they have that posture in Chiga, you know, holding the golden urn. So this, yeah, so we can try that. It's like you're holding like a tray that's a little bit heavy. So it's got all this food on it or whatever. So if this isn't in the right place, then you can't channel that weight down. If your bum is back, then this heavy tray you're holding is going to pull you forwards. So really thrust your sacrum and your pelvis forwards. So you want the feeling that even though this tray is here, you're somehow getting underneath it with your sacrum. Yeah, so this sort of riding horse stance. Basically they have the two postures. They have this, which is more like a meditation, and this, which is for power. And this is just really sprouting up. I mean, ideally, if you had like a shelf in the room here, and you could just slip underneath it and then just press up into it, by pushing your legs up and pushing your arms up, and just feeling that that tension between the feet and the hands, or even like a low ceiling. I mean, you could do it here. You could even just have fists up. Yeah. So if you had that shelf there and you were really pushing up into it, trying to drive yourself down into the legs, then this whole structure would sort of open up, it would swell. So just feel that. Okay, now just bring the hands down to here. And now just, trying your best to keep this relatively still and stable without getting too tense. We'll just turn the head, yes, so just rotate the head. So you don't really want, your hands are there to sort of help you feel it staying still. So you don't want the bum to stick out when you lean forwards. You just want the spine to bend. So like a young tree. So where it comes out of the ground, that doesn't move, but the tree can bend any way it wants. Yeah, so it's this bit here where we lean back. That's the bit you want to really feel, because we never normally do that sort of thing. You just want the feeling that the heart can sort of face upwards if you want it to. This is like a flower, and you're just trying to get it looking upwards. Just feel the legs just sort of working a bit different. The legs like this sort of thing. And then just change direction. You can also change direction every time you do it. Some people like that. So in other words, every time you go around, you just change direction. Ooh. So I want to try and keep these two hips level. So I don't want this to happen too much. It's going to happen a little bit. And then just slowly reduce the circles to bring it back to the top. Okay. And now let's just, so it's basically riding horse, yeah, you know, this arm shape, and you just let the elbows drop. Yeah? So it feels like your two elbows are both pointing at your Dan chin, you know, through the forearms. And you're just pushing your sacrum forward. So it really does feel like you're leaning back. With this feeling you're getting underneath something. So the legs are wanting to straighten, but they're being pushed down by the arms, which are pushing against this surface, this imaginary surface. So you just want the feeling that that pressure down is springing this open. So all the joints are really sprung open by the pressure, rather than compressed, closed, which they will be if your spirit's flat. So it's just sort of charging you up, it's just making you ready to sort of leap into the fray, and lose your life gloriously. Okay. And now let's just do the same thing, but just turning the head. Yeah, so just let the head go. Just start off slowly, let it just build up. And of course, a little bit comes into the chest and the upper spine, but not much. And then just change direction. And then just wind it down. Ooh. Okay, and then back to riding horse, and then just slipping into holding the golden urn. Yeah, you just want to feel how this posture demands spirit. You can't do it with the same mind that you would do normal riding horse. It's really demanding this fight to come into you. Yeah, so the spine is like a whip. Yeah? So you can whip energy up the spine to the top of the head and out. This is the feeling. And if there's any tension, chronic tension in that spine, then it will just block that ripple, that whippy ripple that comes up. Okay, so in order to have this mind that's talking to itself all the time, we basically have to become sick, or our spine does, yeah? And the best way to heal it is just to, force energy to pass through, and then the energy flowing will iron out the kinks in the spine. This is the idea. Okay. Now let's just try that Qigong that we've been doing. So we're just sort of making a heart shape. You think of a heart as like this, yeah? So we're just making a heart shape, coming into the heart. And then we make an even bigger heart. So we go right up as high as we can. And just what we want to try and feel is just what happens in my spine to make my hands separate. It's like I'll just lean back slightly and then the hands will separate. So I'm making like as big a heart as I can with my hands there. And then this is just a smaller one that I'm sort of reaching forwards. You can't see it in the screen really. But you're reaching forwards. You're just gathering energy, bringing it into your heart. And then here, just feeling that little click in your posture that allows you to release that energy upwards. And then it just cascades all around. It's like it's raining. And then you just sort of bend your legs to get the bottom of the heart as low as you can. And then here. So just trying your best not to let the weight of the arms tip you forwards. Yeah. So your heart fills up. And then you're using the strength in the legs and the spine to send the arms up. And then here, whoa, something happens and it releases. So it should have the same sort of mood as when we stood in holding the golden urn. It's much more active than normal riding horse. Wow. Yeah, so just imagine you've got this little Zen master dressed in his Japanese clobber, standing beside you with a big stick. And he's just watching for any sag in the spirit, and he'll whack you on the back with that stick. So you can't, that sag in your spirit is basically your bum going out for us, in our terminology. So you just have to keep, it's like the hand on your sacrum driving it forwards all the time, because it will drift back given the chance. So you have to introduce a force that's driving it forwards. And in a sense, that's all you have to do, because then this will just generate itself. So just imagine that hand of the master just pushing you down and forwards into your legs. Wow. You're cursing him. Yeah, so here it will tend to go back. Yeah. And then when you bring the hands in, basically here it will tend to go back. Wow. Yeah, so the mind is such a seductive refuge. Yeah, so here, the only reason you're coming in is to build up the pressure so that you can burst out. The same here, when you're coming down, the only reason you're coming down is to load the springs of the legs so that you've got some oomph to reach out again. So you're not coming in order to rest. Yeah, so this is the last one. Yeah. So, whoa. Okay, so now let's just bring it up into riding horse again. Yeah, but just feel like it's wanting to slip into this. So the elbows are wanting to drop down and the hands are wanting to express. So it's sort of in between. And so you're ready to let your energy out. You're ready to leap into battle, scream, lose your temper. Yeah, so within the context of like a religious service, it would be the song, the hymn. So singing with gusto, letting your heart out, really meaning it. You know, we can just imagine an actor, you know, like an actor just declaiming, you know, soliloquy, really just projecting to the gods, you know, to the back of the audience. Yeah, so you're just a machine really for transmitting energy, for letting energy pass up you from the ground and out. Yeah. And just feel how just so important the position of this is for the working of that machine. Yeah, it only needs to be out by like a millimeter, and your effectiveness is just so much reduced. So Sila, you know, the Israeli girl who's normally with these groups, she's in Germany on a Zen retreat for until mid-August, I think. And she sent me their itinerary. You know, so they're up at 3 in the morning and they're starting at 3:30. But they start, the first session is chanting. Yeah. So just imagine, you know, if you're starting the day with these chants, just how it would just bring your energy up. It would just mobilize you. So they start the day at 3:30 and they finish at 9 in the evening. She asked me to go. Would have been an experience. Okay. So now let's just try just working the legs just a little bit more dynamically. Yeah. Okay. So just trying my best just to sort of stay in the middle. I don't want to move side to side too much. So I've got 50% of the weight in each foot, but I just want to work the legs just by bringing up the heel. And again, just this will tend to make your bum go out. So it's a good exercise because you can really feel your bum being in if you've got it in. So it's like you're sort of pumping a ripple of energy up into your sacrum using the leg. So the important thing is just not to have too much movement. You don't want to dissipate the energy by moving your body. So just imagine your sacrum is just really, really heavy. It's going to take much more than this to move it. Yeah, so here I'm on the toes of this foot and the heel of this foot. And so you're alternating toes and heel. Yeah. So it's difficult to get onto the toes, but it's also difficult to get into the heel. And if you can get into the heel, that will tend to keep your bum in. So, it's difficult. Ooh. It's one of the problems nowadays is that there's just so much material. There's so much available. There's so many choices that no one really commits to one. So John used to say that, in the old days, a master, he'd have just had a couple of exercises, like this and something else. But he would have just practiced those exclusively for years. And so he would have become like a real master. He'd have used these exercises just to go really deep. And again, just imagine that little Suzuki, who's only like 4'11". So tiny. Yeah. Imagine him standing here with his stick. If I let my bum stick out, I'll get a whack. Wow. Okay, now the same sort of idea, but just much more sort of just side to side now. So like just a really sort of gentle jog. You can imagine you're jogging or just pacing. It's like the foot barely peels off the ground before it slips back again. Almost like you've trodden on chewing gum and you've got those strings of gum attaching your feet to the ground and they never quite snap. It's lovely doing this on the grass or the sand. These surfaces are deathly. And again, just making sure that these other centers can just align themselves vertically with this one. If there's any sense that this is back, then again, you've just got nothing going up. And now let's just bring the arms up. And again, same thing, just the arms just sort of just help that channel. Yeah. So you can really feel now how the action of the feet on the ground really pumps into the hands. So it is like you're releasing birds from your hands with each pulse of your stepping. And just feel the lope, feel the side to sideness. And that's just really natural and really soothing, almost like rocking a baby. And just feel your heavy coccyx just helping to stretch the lower spine. And this will tend to put strain on the spine. As soon as you lift the hands above the head, the lower back has to work harder. So you've got to really concentrate on not letting it bend, kink too much. Whoa. And so for me, this is just prayer. You know, if prayer is just, you know, letting your energy out upwards, if you like, without any ulterior motive other than simply to worship. That's exactly what we're doing here, really. Okay, so let's just speed it up a little bit if you fancy. Yeah, so if this was an Osho dynamic meditation, we'd be doing this for 45 minutes. But you'd be with a whole gang and there'd be all this sort of trance music going on. So it would be easy. You probably don't believe me, but the straighter your arms get, the easier it gets. Okay, so now let's just so you're just an instrument for transmitting energy. Okay, so just whole body breathing. Almost like you just reached out too much. It's just, you just have to bring it back. Otherwise you'd lose it. So it's like, and then back in. Yeah. You just want that feeling that you're sort of boneless. You know, they talk a lot about that in the Tai Chi writings. And you're so soft, it's almost like you don't have any bones. So very much like the octopus. That's what's remarkable about them. They're just sort of, you know, they can just change into any shape, really. Ooh. Yeah, so like it or lump it, Tai Chi is a martial art. So it's a warrior path. You know, you're not an artist. You're not a meditator. You're a warrior. And the warrior just serves the Lord. Yeah? They have no concern for their own life. They just do as they're told. But they do it really well. Be who you are, but be it well. That's one of the things about having, you know, when you have kids, you just realize just how different they all are. So it's like, you know, there's like, you know, they say there's been about 120 billion people on the planet since mankind started. And every one of them is completely different. They're all unique. So in a sense, that's our job. Our job is just to sort of locate that uniqueness and just express it, just let it out somehow. And like Suzuki said, expressing yourself has got nothing to do with what we normally think of expressing ourselves. Yeah. So he said, I can see the essence of a student much easier when they're just sitting in zazen facing the wall and is all he can see is their back, than when he's seeing the art that they're produced, or all these things we normally think of as expression. He says all that's terribly superficial and very conditioned by society. He says, but when he just watches the student sitting, they're sort of universal. They're of nature rather than of man. So they belong in a much bigger universe, if you like. You know, like a sea anemone. You remember sea anemones? They're just there, stuck on the rock, and they're just waving their arms around all day. And every now and then something swims within range and they snatch it and gobble it up. Yes, imagine you're in the water and there's like a tracer in the water so you can see all the swirls. So these movements would really be affecting the water that you're in. Now the same is happening here. The air is swirling because of these movements. So these movements are reaching into, you know, all the corners of your room. So just try and be aware of that. So what you do is affective. You're being affected, but also everything around you is by you. You. Okay. So let's just. Yeah. So just feel like this space that you're embracing is trying to expand. It's trying to push your arms out. So this point on your back between the shoulder blades opposite the heart is being stretched gently. And the same thing here, like the space between your legs is swelling. And so this is naturally just stretching across. And so what is it that gives us the readiness, you know, the readiness to sort of leap into action? It's almost this sense that we own the space. You know, we are here and every part of it is part of me. So I am the space, I own the space. So that's spirit, that's just, you know, when your spirit is up and charged, then, you know, you become sort of domineering and aggressive and unpleasant in a good way. So the two people here that I know, the healthiest, the strongest and the healthiest two people that I know here are also the most unpleasant. Okay, so let's just finish with just a little bit of this one, but just feel how here, as you expand out, you're just, it's almost like you're just trying to throw the heart upwards with this back bend. Here, you're almost pulling the heart into the Danchen, and then here, just whipping it up. So if you did this really quick, there'd be a real whiplash through your body. So here, you're sort of gathering the energy, dipping down, and whoa, whoa. Just dipping, so these two almost pulling together, and then whoa. You don't want the slowness of Tai Chi to be an indication of low energy level. If anything, it's an indication of a higher energy because you're stretching these explosive moments into really long, lingering moments. And then, so if you were to do that in a fighting context, it would be over so quickly, you wouldn't have seen it. So here we're just stretching it, just making that moment last as long as we can. And just feel the intensity that you need just to string it out. And then basically just holding golden urn is just one of these that's been strung out forever, as long as you're standing like this. So there's this sense of you're still releasing, you're still expanding. Whereas the other shape, this, it's like you're doing the opposite. You're retreating, you're going inside. Here everything is coming out. So you really need to get into those legs to keep the flow going, because the energy that's coming out of your heart and your hands is coming from your legs. Oh, la, la, la. Okay. And now let's just bring it back here. So just containing it. Yeah, so when you come back inside, just resist the temptation to chatter. So you can just occupy the mind like a figure of eight. Yeah, so, I'll often just feel this one, or even in the hips or between the feet. Okay. So head suspended, like your legs are tending to bend, to let your coccyx down between them. Okay, great.